It's an old story, but a good one. And a good story is worth repeating. This story begins with a garden. A garden of rich herbs, roots, medicinal plants of all manner, magical plants, and sharp thorns. For this was the garden of a crone. Some say she was a witch, and a wicked one at that. And some say she was a wise woman, and a kindly one at that. But she did not care what people thought, for she was concerned with the magic and the mystery of the dark, of the night sky, and her mistress, the moon. And so she carried a crescent moon upon her staff as a source of her power. And she was concerned with the mystery of the earth and the growing that happens in the dark, in the roots, in the deep, underground. And lived in a tall tower. A tower that provided her with an observatory. There she dwelt, isolate from the rest of the world, until along came a baker from a nearby village who had spied her garden and found growing in it rich stands of rampion, which is just what his wife had been begging for. The crone caught him and exacted payment from him that he should pay for the rampion theft with the child that was to be born. Now, some people say this was a terrible thing, that a child should be taken in this manner. And some people say it was a good thing that the child should become the ward of such a wise woman, who indeed brought the child up in her tower and raised her in the ways of her order, isolated her from the world of other people, and accustomed her to the darkness and the night sky. And the child, as you probably know, was named Rapunzel, for the rampion that had brought her to that garden. And there Rapunzel grew from babe to girl to womanhood. And as she grew there, her hair grew too, long and golden. So beautiful was it, and strong, that the crone would call out to her, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." And Rapunzel would lean from the tower to allow her foster mother access by way of the hair that formed a golden stair. And so the crone would daily go out into the woods to gather her roots and her herbs, and then come back in the evening and call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair," and so climb back into the tower to join the child. Now it happened that there was also in this story a young man. Some say he was a cad. Some say he was a hero. But he didn't care what others said, because he was a prince. And he need not heed the affairs of the common people. He bore upon his head a golden crown, for his power was drawn from the daylight, the laws of men. And he carried in his hand a sharp sword as a symbol of his power. And when he saw the daily ritual with the crone calling to Rapunzel, he took advantage of the girl, and while the crone was away, called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair." And in this way, Rapunzel's innocence was ended. The prince and Rapunzel met in secret, and in secret they knew one another. They made love, though they knew nothing of true love. And their daily meetings bore fruit. And in that fruitful garden new life began to grow within Rapunzel as she became pregnant with their children, carrying in her womb twin babes born of their new knowledge. Well, she could not hide that secret from the crone, and when the crone discovered that Rapunzel was heavy with child, she knew she had been deceived. And so, as the story goes, the crone tore the hair from Rapunzel's head and banished her into the wilderness, into the daylight, to wander alone. And when next the prince came to call on his love, he discovered the crone, who threw him from the tower, down into the sharp thorns of her garden. And there he fell, and great was his fall. He was blinded by the sharp thorns that pierced his eyes. His crown was thrown from him, and now he had to wander in the wilderness as a beggar, leaning upon the sword now as a staff to help him find his way in misery. And so away from their garden of pleasure, each wandered. Now, the crone had looked at Rapunzel and seen in her, well, what she hoped to see, a future crone, a votress in her order. The prince had looked at Rapunzel and seen in her what he hoped to see, a future queen to sit beside him on their thrones. Neither had looked at Rapunzel and seen her pain. And yet her pain was to be the source of her power. How long must a man suffer for his transgressions? How long must a woman carry her pain? However long that is, in time, Rapunzel's day had come. She lay down alone in the wilderness, and in great pain, crying out, she brought forth from her womb twin babes. Such were her cries, so powerful were they, that they called forth out of wandering her lost lover, who found his way to her. He knelt beside her and said, "My love, I have wandered in pain and darkness, and I have had to look into the depths of my very soul. I have treated you unfairly. Can you ever forgive me?" And at these words, Rapunzel's pain broke forth from her heart. Tears flowed across the prince's eyes, washing the blindness from him, washing his sight anew. For such was the power of her pain that she could cure his blindness. And at length, the two looked into one another's eyes and truly saw each other and truly knew love. And there they made a new life with their new family and lived happily, as we all hoped to. But what became of the crone? Well, I think that in time she ascended to join her mistress in the moon. And there she winks down upon us all. For she knows we must grasp the thorns to hold the rose. And in the grand story of life, this mystery remains. The greatest of our joys can spring from our pains. The water is wide, I cannot cross over. Neither have I the wings to fly. Give me a boat that can carry two, and two shall row, my love and